Focus on love. Love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling's bogus. Focus on love. Love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling is bogus. Focus on love. Love what's in focus. Aim for above because the ceiling.
Hello, welcome to the next episode of Famous Rapper Convos, the show that helps rappers create meaningful connections online. Today, we're meeting somebody that will inspire us in new ways and fire up neural pathways that have laid dormant for decades. He's an investor he's active in startup communities. He helps founders connect to fundraising opportunities. He's ran companies assisting in the digital transformation of information for decades. And he's the co-founder of NFT music startup bandroyalty.com, which buys music rights and ties them to NFTs to allow others to share in the music royalties. Noble A. Drakoln. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, man. Thanks a lot for having me, David. I appreciate it. I mean, it's exciting. You know, all I can tell you is that my journey in music actually began in the 90s. And my cousin, who I hadn't seen since we were little, for almost a decade, he had got caught up in, the gang life and the like. And that just wasn't the direction I was going. And but he's one of my favorite cousins. And when I saw him, he was just walking down the street. I'm like, man, I haven't seen you in years. What are you up to? And he told me that he had kind of stepped away from gangs, and he was now doing his own rap recordings, and they were in the studio and etc. And I'm like, man, well, let me know whatever I can do to help. I've always wanted to invest and start my own label. And he goes, okay, great. I'm gonna call few people and we'll set up some meetings and we'll get it done. And back then, cell phones weren't as ubiquitous like in 96, 97. I had a cell phone. Some people had cell phones, but people were still dealing with landlines, and there's still pay phones. And he didn't have a cell phone or a landline in his home. And he had a pay phone right around the corner. And the next morning he went out to call some people, start setting up some meetings for us. And he was out there early in the morning, and one of his old enemies from the gang life saw him, and when he got in his car, shot him 7 times. And at that moment, when I got a call from his wife at the time, I thought we're going to be done. We're not going to do any music at all. I thought he was going to die, to be honest. And so that was kind of my first entree into the rap world. We hadn't even made a song yet, and my cousin got shot 7 times right before he got started.
I'm so sorry that happened.
Oh, he lived. The great, we were sorry it happened, but he lived, and I saw him. He came by the house the other day, and we hung out. But that was over 20 years ago, and because of him and the relationships that we started forming, we actually got our first music deal with a group called, at the time it was called Private Eye, and it was attached to Mercury Records. And Private Eye Mercury was owned by Joe Isgro. And for those people who don't know who Joe Isgro is, look him up. He financed the movie Hoffa, and he made the careers of Diana Ross, Michael Jackson. He was the one who got them on the radio. And at one point, the rules of radio actually changed because of him, because he was actually the one who instituted the idea of payola, getting paid to be on the radio. And so we signed to his label, and that began, the next phase of our journey of learning what a print and distribution deal was, or press and distribution deal was. And Mercury got bought out by Universal, and later on, we really changed how we were doing music, because we had met Tupac about a month before he passed away. And so Tupac actually was murdered in Vegas. And then not too long after that, Biggie was murdered in Los Angeles at the museum right off of Wilshire. And so and then Mercury got bought out by Universal. And so at the time, most of the major labels were not looking towards West Coast rap at all. So we had a hard time finding extra funding to get our music out, etc. And Universal bought Mercury out. And at the time, Universal had just spent over $30 million to buy into the Cash Money family. So we ended up shelving our music completely and going a different direction. And during that whole time, I started learning about music royalties, what publishing is, what mechanical rights were, what sync rights were. And I ended up going a different direction, which is investing in music royalties, buying music royalties, giving advances against some artists, financing other artists to come out. Because even then, the music labels had changed, right? There was no long A&R time frame where people were, in-house for like 3 years being trained to be a performer. It was kind of like, if you're good and you guys start building a following, we'll help you. If not, good luck. You're on your own. Kind of pretty much where it is now. Fortunately, indies are finding a lot more success than when the early 2000s started popping up. But it just changed, and it was a big paradigm shift for me on how to participate with music and how to be involved. And now we're full circle, right? So we've got band royalty NFTs. We're creating digital non-fungible tokens. My buddy Rob Schwartz of Whomag, we've been in the rap game for 20-something years with Whomag TV and all that stuff. We actually signed up a distribution deal with him under the Sony Orchard labels that we're going to eventually add people who are bringing masters into this NFT world. So it's funny, like stuff you did when you're literally a kid, we're in our 20s, that you're coming back around to 20 years later, and now that you're in your mid 40s. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's really interesting how life comes in cycles like that.
Yeah.
Different waves.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you first got into music in the 96 when your cousin was shot. Have you ever created your own music or written songs of your own?
You know what? I've written poetry. I was on music with my cousin. I was on music with our producer. I just, the funny thing is, I wrote a bunch of books and I've written a bunch of other stuff, and I've been highly discouraged over the years, particularly in the beginning, because I didn't really, it's always separating the art from the ability to make money, right? And so my whole thing was always finance and investing and the like. And I was the guy that always supported the artists. I was the guy who invested and helped artists. And I would step in and be a part of, do ad libs and be there, writing bars and the like. But I was more the suit of the relationship because, most of the people, they didn't really know how to run the business of music. They didn't really understand what their rights were. They didn't realize they could be both the publisher and the artist when they file. So you could be their own publishing company, get the 50% there, or the 100% publishing royalties, in addition to getting the writer's royalties on the copyright. And then the abilities that the publishing side gives you, which is the mechanical, the syncing, all the stuff that the writers don't necessarily get based on just performance royalties. So, for me, I started getting more deeper into the messy numbers behind the music, as opposed to, being the battle rapper slash, super rapper that in my heart I always feel like I am.
Wait, in your heart you feel like you are?
Yeah, I write all the time. I've written, like I said, I've been writing poetry, writing stuff for my whole life.
You write books?
I've been a writer for other rappers, and we've shared, bars and other stuff. But I've just never got in front of the mic, which is weird because I've spoken on stage. I've been on stage with thousands and thousands of people. But I have to always commend any artist at the level of vulnerability that they have to have in being able to tell the story they want to tell. And I think that for me, I just have never been good at that level of vulnerability. You know, there's some people who look at rap and they try and assume or try and behave like it's a payday. But I mean, you're listening to Nas, KRS One, you're paying attention to, Tupac's lyrics. You know, there's a level of commercialization that's happened. You know, five footers. You start going through the lists, right? There's a level of vulnerability that you start having to put out as an artist to tell people this is me, and there's a high level of opportunity for rejection, right? You know, you have someone like Too Short who runs the spectrum. He has a whole different conversation than most Def or Talib Kweli, but there's still an exposure of who they are and people willing to accept them for who they are. And so I think that for me, as a nascent wannabe artist, I just never want to be fully exposed to be like, this is who I am and this is what I'm all about. That's a high level exposure. So in my heart, I think that I've got uh, a bunch of stuff I want to say, particularly now, um, with the Black Lives Matters and what that even means. You know, the people versus the political organization. You know, because I think that's two different things. There's a lot of stuff that I want to say. And I was talking to my cousin the other day. I said, listen, we need to create an EP. That same cousin that got shot, I said we need to do an EP because now all our nephews have all grown up rapping and going to the studio and recording. So it's not just him and I like when we started back in the day and some buddies, but it's like a whole additional generation underneath us that are coming up. So I was just telling him, I said, look, you know, if they could do Bad Boys #3 and come back 20 years later with everybody being grandpas, and we're like, you know, we could definitely uh, talk about our view of how things have changed in the last 20 years.
I love that. That sounds like I want to hear that EP right now.
Yeah, I just got to pin them down. So with this project that we have, it's called Band NFT, but we released a series. It's a limited edition series of 3,000 NFTs, and the thematic of the series is every time it's played. And so right now we've been commissioning artists that we know in the rap world, commissioning country pop to make their own individual songs based on that theme of every time it's played. So my cousin just came with the hook the other day, and he sent me the beat. And so right now we're in the middle of writing the verses for it. And I think that that may be my kind of coming out moment. We'll see, but I'll get some coaching or whatever, and but that'll be my coming out moment to be on that particular track. But more importantly, I'm really excited at getting people's perspectives because when I created this project for the NFTs, I really wanted to celebrate the diversity in music. I'm a Toby Keith fan, right? You know, people have Lil Nas X, but before Lil Nas X, there's a lot. So I know a lot of people who love country music, and then the blend of country music with rap, the Dunkadunk Blues. I mean, come on, you get all this stuff that rap and hip hop has literally influenced. And I've just been a big country music fan. I've been a classical music fan. All five of my kids play music from piano. My 3-year-old, my 5-year-old, my 9-year-old play piano. My 9-year-old picked up the violin. My 23-year-old, he plays the alto sax. My 22-year-old plays the trumpet. And
You got a whole band.
we got a whole band. And it's funny, too, because I recently did my 23andMe, and I found out we have a whole branch of our family, the Gabriels, that have been jazz musicians since 1851. And they've got 8 generations of jazz musicians in New Orleans that have been performing. And Charlie Gabriel just got the Lifetime Achievement Award a few years back, which, he's the 4th generation of those, like 7 or 8 generations who've been playing continuously playing jazz since 1850s. So, it's one of those things where you start realizing that, the music's in your blood, and this is the reason why I like all kind of music. And I really want this project to celebrate the diversity, even though, I can't lie. You know, my first introduction to hip hop and rap was DJ Quick. Tonight's the
Well,
night.
okay. Let me stop you there. So I want to ask this question. So it sounds like you are an artist of, in certain terms. So like in about 3 minutes, could you go back to like when you were first introduced to music and telling the full story of how you got to where you are now as an artist?
Okay, so my question is, when I first got introduced to music, or when I first became business or oriented in the game of music?
No, like, yeah, your first exposure to music and
oh man, my first exposure is like Fred Astaire and the Rat Pack.
is that I Love Lucy?
Mr. Bojangles, right? Sammy Davis Jr. In our house we grew up. I was born in '75, so anything that the Pointer Sisters, right? So my exposure to music was so varied, and my mom's taste in music was so eclectic, right? Because she appreciated both music and she appreciated dancers. And so, Fred Astaire, and I don't know if nobody on this show probably has ever heard of it, but there's a old movie called Holiday Inn, in which Fred Astaire really puts it all out for these holidays that people can come in and enjoy his hotel. And so, it's, but from watching those old musicals and, Dean Martin and all these guys, my exposure to music, and originally, I was born in New York, right? So I was actually born in the Bronx. And so I lived half of my life in California and my first half in New York. So, my exposure to music, man, is just all over the place. I remember when we used to have a neighbor when I was a kid, and when I discovered the blues, and old guy, absolutely drunk, right? And at the first, like whenever you get your Social Security, like the second or third of the month, this guy would buy a bunch of booze, and he literally would be playing all the blues he could play as loud as he could play it. And so that was my first exposure to blues when I was like 7, so 7 or 8, and I'm liking blues. I was like, okay, I get it. I remember I had a really good friend in high school, and the reason why I ended up liking country really is my good friend from high school. He was a military brat, and his family was from Idaho, and all they ever played was country music. And when I started listening to the lyrics of country music, and I realized that it was so close to blues, to be honest, right? And you start realizing the origins of a lot of the influence of blues on country, Zydeco, how all that stuff was part of a mishmash of music before we started separating things out and then making black radio and white radio, but how all these people were together, right? And you look at Elvis, which is a huge influence on both sides of the fence that people were kind of trying to create back then. You start realizing that, music is music, man. It's an expression of people's soul and their spirit, and is an expression of the moment and the time, and that people are constantly borrowing from one another, and they're constantly sharing ideas, and it's required that you do that if you really want to be a musician that grows. You have to absorb and take in all this stuff, and then make it your own at the same time. Amy Winehouse, I loved Amy Winehouse, but she was across the board eclectic, deep soul, funk slash neo soul meets an Image from the 50s. I mean, it was like all over the place, and how much time hopping was happening. But no one can deny the music before she passed was groundbreaking in the fact that it was retro groundbreaking, right? That it was just a throwback, and it had so much eclecticness in it. Mariah Carey, she was the I remember hearing Mariah Carey for the first time, and then when she brought ODG, right, Old Dirty Bastard, on ODB on her album, that was one of the best and first collaborations of a mainstream pop singer and rap being mashed in such a good way. Now, this is not to discount G-Funk, and Warren G and the crew over there. But that right there was just a beautiful way to have that pop voice with rap, and it changed the game, and it hasn't really gone back since then. So anyway.
Okay, so you grew up listening to all over the place. Your mom loved these musicians, Fred Astaire. You watched Holiday Inn. In high school, you had a neighbor that played the blues. No, 7 years old. 7 years old. Your neighbor was playing the blues.
The blues, man. I mean, like, it was loud. It was the blues. You're like, yeah, that was some sad stuff.
And up through high school, have you been creating? When did you start writing poetry?
Oh man, that's funny because high school probably was my breakthrough year in really writing poetry. And when I started writing poetry, at first it was kind of a way to, because people journal, and I'm not a big journaler, and I wasn't really a big person to write a diary or memoirs and all this kind of stuff. But there's so much going on, and so much stuff was changing, right? You had people being, we were worried that we were going to get conscripted to the Iraq War at that time, because this is the 90s, and we didn't know what the heck was going on, and like what they were going to do, and there's so much stuff happening at that time. Mm-hmm. In that time frame. And in middle school I got exposed by my best friend to DJ Quick. So that's how I got like literally knee deep in rap. I knew about rap, but my parents in that generation were not interested in what NWA had to say or anything. And so but the idea of party rap in DJ Quick, Tonight's the Night, that sold me. I was in 100%. And so when high school came around, that's when I got exposed to country, and I saw that the everything's stories, right? It's all stories, and it's all about the music you're putting your stories to. And so I just started writing poetry, and it was interesting because as I started writing poetry and I got deeper and deeper into it, I started shifting genres. So you go from just free-form poetry to, at the time, slam poetry started becoming a thing. People are performance poetry, and people started going out performing. And then I started shifting into... Did
you perform slam poetry?
Yeah, I did perform some slam poetry at a few local coffee houses. And again, it was that exposure. Some people were coming up and they're talking about, like some serious stuff, being molested and, just like some deep stuff for how horrible the world is. And I've never really seen the world as a horrible place. I grew up in horrible places, but I've never seen the world as a horrible place. And so I was always trying to work out my internal dialogue more so than my external world. And so my writing started getting more introspective. I discovered haikus. So I became a huge fan of haikus for a while. Then tankas, which are the outgrowth of haikus, in which it's not just the 575, but it's 57577. And so I started doing that, and then and I stuck with freeform, and then.
And what's the topic matter, or like, was there any common themes that were coming up?
There was some common themes. So a lot of the themes always had to do with love, romanticism. Then when I started doing slam poetry, it was about injustice and environment. The first article I wrote, I was 16, it was nationally publicized in a magazine called Exploit Magazine, I wrote two big articles, one about the riots in '92, and I co-wrote that. And then I wrote another article about the environment. So that was kind of the shtick too at the time, that I was just so focused about a greener earth and a more just world. And so I was writing a lot of passion meets, anger slash, now we call it woke, but it's just at the time we're just talking conscious, right? We're talking about just being conscious, right? And consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a lot of stuff like that. And then,
what was your process like for writing? Were you writing mostly in classes at home?
Yeah, so it's funny. Like my process has changed over the years, but one thing which is funny, I have them all on my desk now, is the 3x5s, and I use the 3x5s like religiously for writing, jotting ideas, story plots. I don't know if you guys can see this. Yeah, story plots, ideas. Ideas for stories, but
Hold on,
plot.
let me steal that idea really quick.
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff. I'm always using these. I'm always using these things, and so I've always used them even in high school because they're ubiquitous, right? And so you have these 3x5 cards, and they're also easy to catalog. I got that from speech and debate. So I was in forensics for a long, for all of high school too. So I did a lot of Lincoln Douglas debates and extemporaneous speaking and all this. So I'm always using these 3x5 cards to just kind of jot down and write and put down my ideas. In that and legal pads. And so what I wrote my first book because I had a long commute from Long Beach to Century City. It was almost like an hour and a half, some days 2 hours between the bus and the train, going both ways. And so I took the time and I used legal pads to draft and write my first book. And so between the two, the process is always the same for me. I go over stuff in my head, like, I don't know, for days. And it's running, it's like a computer with like something on a soft loop in the background. Like, like, I don't know if you ever download stuff on Netflix. They say, oh yeah, the download is happening in the background, so you can still watch whatever you want. So it's the same thing when I'm going through an idea or a process. And so it'll be an idea that kind of mulls around in the back of my head for X amount of time. And then I'll just grab the cards, or I'll grab the yellow pad or legal pad. And between the time that I mull it over to sometimes in the morning when I'm taking my shower to finish up the idea, then first thing, because I usually get up early, if I could spend the first hour and a half just jotting down ideas or getting, doing a brain dump, then stuff pops up. Just before this call that we had, this interview today, I sat with my partner and we did a whole brainstorming session on some other stuff that we're writing. And sure enough, we came up with the key tag for our NFTs, our music NFTs. And, we figure we're going to go with helping fans to using NFTs to help fans become music moguls. And that's going to be our tagline now, because we really want people to use our NFTs to really learn how to make this a backstage pass to becoming a music mogul using our NFTs. And that was a whole brainstorming session. So it's always something, but it's always running in the back of your mind. And I'm also a big self-plagiarizer too, all the time. So if I've already written something and I've been able to kind of have the first initial draft done somewhere, then I'm always content to go back to that draft. And it's the funniest thing because, I'm using that as inspiration to start, but it's a whole new piece by the end of it. And so I'll end up but it makes it easier than staring at a blank page. Because that's always the death knell for anybody, is to stare at emptiness. And so I use my previous writings as that kind of prompter for the next.
Like composting.
Yeah. And it's funny because the final one made me look nothing like what I started off with as the previous writing, but it just helps to get the mind to move, to be able to see what you were thinking in the past.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. So you regularly create these documents that often go nowhere, and then you do further iterations later on?
Yeah. And it made it, and they all go somewhere at some time. different times, man. And it's crazy because I have it's just crazy. I've got tons and tons of these notebooks all over the place for years. I mean, they're on my shelf back here somewhere. Yeah, just books of ideas that I've written down, and they end up somewhere. I've gotten patents. I've published. I've authored 7 books. I've ghostwritten 30.
Whoa.
I've they all end up going somewhere. I have an animated comic book series that I created, which we're actually making music to, called um, The Fantasticals, which is a fantasy, uh, but it's a global fantasy. So
Like a comic book?
yeah, it's a comic book with comic book characters. I'll send you the image later on. But each one of the characters comes from a different type of mythological background. So we have a African American kid who's a descendant from pirates and buccaneers. Uh, you have a kid who is a descendant of leprechauns, but she's the first female leprechaun. You have a girl who's a descendant of this lost sea of gold, El Dorado. Then we picked another young man who's from Asia, but he grew up in America, but he can turn into a dragon. So, and then we also have another kid who was actually a child that was kidnapped by fairies, and he's a changeling. So I put all these mythologies together called the Fantasticals, and we've been recently pitching this to Sony, and it's a story. I wrote the first season out, registered with Writers Guild of America West. And, we're pitching that. We have another story called The Ancients, which is another project. So I have all this stuff that I've written, and all of them.
So can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you would write that. So you write it first, and then you pitch it to Sony, and then they might give you money.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they option it out. They option the ideas, and for me, all of this stuff is attached to music. So I've got playlists that I've created for each one of these projects. That when they debut, there'll be music attached to different scenes and sections.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm curious, have you ever had the experience where something that you wrote about, you saw somebody else create it without you being involved?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You see it all. Like, I believe that the universe has messages that they want to put out, and it doesn't so. Yeah, I've seen ideas that are similar to what I wanted to put out, not quite the same, but similar. And it's because I always believe the universe is trying to express itself, and the beauty of it is, I can write the same story, but it'll still be a different story through my own interpretation. So I never use that as a discouragement. If I see something similar, it's more of an encouragement, particularly with Hollywood always trying to copy itself. That's why there's so many sequels and so many retro projects. Marvel comics have been out since the 1960s, and now we're in 2020s, and everyone's acting like in the last decade, like comic books just showed up. I've been collecting comic books since I was 9 years old. So things are constantly recycled. So I don't use any of that as a discouragement if I do see stuff that's similar to what I put out, because it still doesn't have my touch on it.
Nice. What's the meaning of love?
Ooh, family. And, that's all I could get it.
Nice. Cool. So we talked a lot about your history thus far, and you have a bunch of projects going on. And so I'm curious, where do you see yourself 12 months from now? And what are the next few steps that you're most excited about taking, or how are you getting there over the next 12 months?
Yeah. So, the next 12 months is kind of roadmapped. If anybody's kind of looked at our website or check out our website. So we have these series of NFTs that we have coming out. We've got a token launch that's going to be used as currency, so musicians can start getting their royalties faster. We've got the EP coming out that I just mentioned. Then we also have another 3 series of these NFTs that are going to come out, and that's really the push for the next 18 months. Really getting people excited and understanding that there is another layer to the music. It's great to be an entertainer. It's great to be a performer. But where all the money is and where all the wealth is built, it's in the writing, it's in owning publishing, it's in understanding what your sync rights look like to be able to get in commercials, maybe even be on this podcast, right? That's where all the money is in your creativity. And so, the goal and the reason why I started this project is to allow artists of all genres, rap included, rap especially, that their work has value, and it has more value than just 99 cents with 30 cents going back to Apple. It has more value than, giving it away for free or hoping that you get enough spins. Pharrell did 45 million spins of Happy, and they sent him a check for a couple $1,000. Any other world, that's 45 times platinum, right? So, we have to come up with a different paradigm in this music industry. And so for the next 12 months, that's my goal, is to kind of shed light on these inequities and hopefully change people's lives.
Cool. So I'm curious to learn more about how this works. So, also, I think it's awesome. It sounds like you're kind of continuing what you did in the past of doing the financial side of the music. And now, is this new way of doing it, how is it better than the past? And how is it different?
Well, the first way, everything is more transparent. Man, it was such a bear back in the 90s trying to figure out, what number one, what rights you had. And then number two, understanding how you're going to collect those rights. Yeah, you have the majors like ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, who are there for the writers. But Cobalt pops up, and all these other, Disco Kid, all these other things have evolved over the years to just give people more transparency to their music. And that's great. It just didn't exist before. Unfortunately, that's not enough to be transparent. It's great to see that you're getting pennies, but should you really still be getting pennies, right? And that's the frustrating part. How do you get over that hurdle? And so NFTs have really a strong opportunity. And when I say NFTs, they're non-fungible tokens, and they are the grown-up version, I like to tell people, of cryptocurrency. Because a non-fungible token is literally just like you and I. There's only one you, David. There's only one me, Noble. We're non-fungible, right? No one can just, you can't just be dropped into my life and my family not notice, right? So it's the same thing with the non-fungible tokens, in that you actually own something that is forever on the digital landscape. So you have Kings of Lion, who put out an album that their fans get, and it's forever. They get $2 million off of those sales of those few albums. That's just never been done before, and especially in a long time since CDs were eliminated, that people could actually get value from a few super fans. If you have 1,000 albums that you put out of your exclusive music, David, and you get your fans because they get backstage information, or if they have it, they get a chance to be at one of your special concerts. But 1,000 people who spend $100 with you, right, to get that access, is $1 million. I mean, or, it's $100,000 for one album. It's a good take. You do that 4 or 5 times a year, you're killing it, and that's way better than trying to hope you're going to get it on the spins. And so it's and the cool part is you can even charge more. We were talking to people who are going to limit it and sell anywhere from $500 to $1,000 because they're TikTok stars, but they're going to be super limited in the ones that they put out. So $500 NFT or $1,000 NFT, which is half of the price of Ethereum now, or a third of the price of Ethereum now that it's gone up again, that makes someone's salary for their salary for the year $500,000 to $1 million off of $500 to $1,000 per fan. But those fans are getting a lot of value because they're the only ones who can listen to the album. They're the only ones who can have it. This idea that you just constantly give away all your content in hopes that maybe someone will bless you, it gets old. And I think a lot of brilliant musicians are getting tired of it. I've been listening. I don't know if you listen to Toby Inegwe out of Houston.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah, great music. Him and his family.
Song, have you heard Fire?
Yeah, just heard it. My wife sent it over the other day.
I love that song.
Mm-hmm. But that's my point, is that all those songs, that music is being made by him at home with his family. They're doing their own videos. They're incorporating their local community. And the level of impact he's having has nothing to do with hoping a major is going to bless them. And so someone like him could put out an NFT album and command a premium for it. 10,000 people paying him $100 an album. That's where I see the NFT space being such a huge game changer. And that your music doesn't have to be bought by everybody to be loved by everybody, and for people to really appreciate the value of you. And so I think the idea of patronage, and it needs to come back. That you don't need to have a million people to love you if or to like you if you got just 1,000 or 10,000 people who really love you and who
Yeah,
will
just to
support you.
survive.
But even beyond survive, that's why I say name survive. That's like wealth. 10,000 people, right? At $100 a piece, that puts you over the top. That puts you at $1 million. Like there's no record label signing $1 million advances right now, realistically, for unknown artists. But you can build up if you got these 50,000 or 100,000 Instagram followers or etc. You can find 5 to 10,000 people who are super fans who will support you because they are on your side. They want to see you succeed, and I think that's the paradigm shift.
That makes sense. So where does your company come in? Because I was reading that people buy the NFTs for a royalty share, but what you're describing now sounds kind of more like a crowdfunding launch, which I think are kind of two different things.
They're different. They're different thoughts and different concepts. So we own the royalties. We buy royalties directly from artists, or we'll put advances or lockdown time periods. And our NFTs, there's no rights to the royalties. What happens is if you own our NFT and when we open up the pool and you meet the requirements of the pool, you can actually put your NFT directly in the pool with us and share in the revenues that are generated. That's one aspect. So artists who come to us who don't necessarily want to do crowdfunding, who don't want to be out there, who just want to be able to collect a check, and if their catalog is producing enough and it meets our metrics, we're happy to give them advances so they can not have to wait every quarter, hopefully, for a check to show up from ASCAP or BMI. They're able to get the advance for several years ahead. But then there's also a model that we're going to evolve into. And that model is the idea that artists will be able to come work with us. And we've actually talked to a few and create their own NFTs and use NFTs as a way to build up their particular fan base and their goals of being able to sell at albums ahead of time. And I don't see it as crowdfunding. I see this as almost like CD sales, but it's just digital. It's that only these 10,000 people own this album. Nobody else can own it, right? And there's no Tower Records anymore. There's no real record stores. There's no, there's some vinyl heads out there like me that go to the vinyl stores, but we don't have music delivered the way it used to be. So why not control your digital landscape and own the digital music that you put out? And that's what NFTs allow people to do. And we hope to develop that for a lot of people as we go forward.
Cool. That sounds amazing. Okay, so we are already 20 minutes over our scheduled time. I have a meeting with my grandma in 9 minutes, but I would like to ask you a series.
Go grandma. We love grandma.
I would ask you a series of quick questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's 2 segments coming up. I'm going to cut each of them short, but the first one is about 3 things. So I want to know, what are 3 things that you've learned from fatherhood?
Patience, kindness, understanding.
Nice. What are 3 of your favorite words?
Happy. Man, that's a good one. Happy. Oh man. So peanut butter. I like the word peanut butter. It's
nice.
A crazy word, but I like the word peanut butter. And I there's a song called "Tell Lori I Love Her," and I like my wife's name, Lori, and so I've actually put it on a mixtape for like 20 years ago when we first started dating. So yeah, I like my wife's name, Lori.
Lori. Happy, peanut butter, and Lori. Great words. What are 3 things that you want everyone to know about you?
3 words I want people to know. Man, you're
3 things.
3 things. Okay, 3 things. Good. 3 things. 3 things. Don't judge a book by its cover would be the first. and that goes both ways, right? I'm not as nice as people think, but I'm not as mean as others think. Um, I'm always persevering. I think hard work can only go so far. So perseverance, I think, is like that next phase of hard work that
Mm.
no one ever tells you that you have to still stay in the game when the game is already they turn the lights out on you. So perseverance and freedom. I just like the ability to, and I've always had it, the ability to do exactly what I want to do when I want to do it, and it's been a blessing, 100%. That doesn't mean that I haven't had ups and downs, but it just means that I've had the freedom to create, and I've always appreciated that.
Mm. Cool. So you said freedom, don't judge a book by its cover. What was the second thing?
The second thing is perseverance.
Perseverance.
You
Yeah.
have
The
to
next
you have
level
to
of
go
hard
beyond
work.
hard work.
Yeah.
It's not just enough to do the hard work. It's you got to persevere even when everything you have to have that moment that Noah had when everybody was laughing at him about the ark, and still he built it.
Right. You have to work hard for 20 years.
Yeah,
So
you got to persevere.
Yeah.
You got to persevere long after everyone said you're a fool.
Amazing. Cool. So I just have a few questions left here. Sorry, let me choose them really quick because I want to cut it down. Okay. What's your experience with freestyle rapping?
You know what? My best experience is when my brother and I were in a cipher like years ago, my little brother, and we were drunk off our butts and we were freestyling. And I don't know if it was the alcohol or if it was the moment, but I really felt we did a great job off of playing off of each other and catching each other's hooks and the whole nine. And that was one of my most fun times I've had with my little brother.
Amazing. Do you still freestyle with him?
No, he's back to producing. He lives in Seattle, and so he tries to suck me in, but I think I've become I didn't persevere. So I think, like I said, I'm trying to get back to that side of myself, David. So,
well, if you're interested in some freestyle rap lessons,
all right.
we can run it back. I'll message you about that later. Okay, my next question: what are 2 albums that changed your life?
Oh man, snap! I have to say, Machiavelli 1 by Tupac. I I just started the label with my cousin, and I used to play that all the time. And between the songs on the album, between 21 Gun Salute and um, Hail Mary, I mean, those were like seminal songs. And I think it's just tapped into like that anger, rage stuff that was going on at the time, and that kind of boldness. The second album that probably had a huge impact on me. Um, and again, I end up being a product of my time, just even saying it, but it has to be Ready to Die by Biggie. Um, that album post his death became more important than previously. And so I was born in New York and grew up on the West Coast. My wife has always been on the West Coast. And so it's funny because she's a Biggie fan and I'm a Tupac fan. So whenever we find moments to kind of be without the kids and we don't have a problem with the curse lyrics, it's always a battle in our house on if we're playing Biggie or Tupac as the first.
Nice. That's funny.
But Lauryn Hill, Miseducation on Lauryn Hill, has got to be a fast follow or a mashup. Like I say, it's so hard to tease this stuff out because the first time I heard the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and then her and her cut with Nas, that album, it broke my heart that it took so long for her to come back on the scene because I was so ready for her, immediate sophomore and junior debut. Because that album was the bomb. Okay, then
has she dropped a second one?
Yeah, I think she has since then. I haven't. I've heard her music, her modern music out,
Hmm.
um, but and then I guess the Outcast album that they dropped that went first, the first commercial album that dropped, that was a big push too, because that was
ATLian?
yeah, ATLian. I think because that's when I really gained an appreciation for Southern, not just rap, but the way that they're musically doing stuff in
Yeah,
Atlanta.
it's a whole nother vibe.
Yeah, it was really good.
Cool. And then my last question is, based on everything you know, what is the secret to becoming a famous rapper?
Be yourself. You know, it is so hard. You know, everyone's got a persona and an idea of what they want people to perceive them as. And you know, I knew the dashes, and I understood, and I didn't even get into the conversation. I built a relation with them and all that. And you know, it's unfortunate that the idea when they came out with Murder Inc. is their response to Death Row uh, ruined so many careers because they didn't. They had some good people. Ashanti, you know, messed up her career and her ability to get, uh, uh, major sponsorship and endorsement deals post the collapse of that. You know, Ja Rule, which I've always liked his music, but you know, I think people have tried to be so much harder than they need to be to create a persona. Whereas, you know, you look at Mos Def, you look at Nas, you know, they're just being who they are. You know, and that's a tough. Like I said earlier on in this conversation, that's a tough thing to do, to see if people will love you or hate you just because of who you are. And as an artist, as a musician, it's a requirement if you plan to have longevity. It's just to be who you are, and you never have to switch it up. It ruined MC
Hmm.
Hammer's career. You know, he's went from fun-loving MC Hammer to trying to be gangster rap MC Hammer, and he could never really recover. Then now he's on Clubhouse, which I'm glad he's having a second or third wind on there. So I just
Is
think
he
people
rapping on there?
no, but he's got
Oh, just talking.
Clubhouse rooms that he's talking and stuff.
Nice.
My point is that it's an unfortunate thing when people try too hard because they're trying to chase the market as opposed
Hmm.
to just letting the market chase them. Let the fans come find you, and
Yeah.
that means you may not be making money right away. It just means that your message, look at Rizzo, right? That Hurts, Truth Hurts. That song was out almost 4 years before it got commercial play. You know, she was in cars going from show to show, just performing her music. And then all of a sudden, Truth Hurts blows up on the radio. And it wasn't like it was any different from the song she wrote. It just sometimes things are not the time that things need to be.
Hmm. Interesting. So you said a lot of stuff there. So to reiterate, you said be yourself. You have to be vulnerable and willing to accept people will love you or hate you for who you really are. You mentioned something along the lines of like, don't try to be better than somebody else. Be your best self. And I think
Don't
those are the
chase the
main three.
market.
Don't chase the market.
Don't chase the market. You just got to make your music, and it's hard not
Amazing.
to. It's hard not to. But yeah,
Cool. Well, Noble, it was really a pleasure talking with you today. I do want to just leave a couple minutes if there's anything any messages you want to put out here at the end for the people watching.
hey, my door is always open. You can find me on LinkedIn. Super easy. I think that's how you found me, David. And
Hmm.
just reach out. You know, I can't do everything for everybody, but you know, if there's something that I can see that I could help, I'm always here to help people because that's what it's all about. We're human beings. We're social, and we have to realize that charity begins at home. So if we can help each other, you know, let's do our best.
Cool. So LinkedIn is the best place to reach out.
Yep.
I think I found you through Startup Accelerator or something. One of
Maybe
those
M
events.
Accelerator.
I'm
Maybe M.
Accelerator. That's what it's
Yeah,
called. Yeah.
I'm an advisor over at M Accelerator. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So check that out as well. If you're a startup founder out there. Okay. Anyway, so this has been Famous Rapper Convos with Noble Drakoln. Should I always say the A? Is the A a critical part of that?
It's up to you. I put it in there, you know, but it's all good. You
Noble
won't
A
find another
Drakoln.
you won't my son, but there's no juniors, so yeah, it'll be easy to find me.
Nice. Well, my name is David Prorock. David James Pro Rock, and my dad is David John Pro Rock. So we're both David J Pro Rock, but I'm not a junior either. So anyway, all right. It was great talking with you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
And this will be uploaded probably Saturday. I'll send you the link.
Awesome.
Sweet. Thank you.
Focus on love, love what's in focus, aim for above, because the ceiling's bogus. Focus on love, love what's in focus, aim for above, because the ceiling is bogus. Focus on love, love what's in focus, aim for above, because the ceiling's bogus. Focus on love what's in focus, aim for above, because the ceiling is bogus. I wanna lay down a never-ending road, we never go to